So we'll get started. Fine. So I'm going to read the public comment. The Family Life Advisory Committee welcomes and encourages public comment. Registration to participate in public comment begins 30 minutes before the posted start time of the meeting. Public comment is not intended to be a question and answer platform with the committee members. Generally, committee members will not respond to comments made. All those registered to give public comment will be granted 3 minutes and will be asked to complete comments when the buzzer sounds. A total of 3 minutes is allocated for public comment on today's agenda. Those members wishing to share additional comments with the committee do so by emailing the FLAC information at fcps.org. Everybody on the list, according to Dawn?
Sorry, there was no public comment. Just as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. The little blue lights up there are the sound. And just as an FYI, our support person, Megan, is actually joining us virtually today. And so she is on that meet as well to take and support minutes too.
So we're going to go around and introduce ourselves again, and we'll start over there.
Sure. Hi, I'm Casey Nixon. I'm a teacher at TJ Middle School.
Hi, I'm Kemi Daniel, and I'm representing the Bridge Oakdale. Sorry, I'm just trying to get myself set.
I'm Raven Jones, and I represent the Walkersville feeder.
Callie Zanarini, and I represent the Lincoln area.
I'm Kate Majewski. I represent the Urbana feeder.
I'm Jennifer Korth, Thomas Johnson High School.
Hi, I'm Ray Gallagher. I'm the board of education liaison.
I'm Brandy Appleton from the Tuscarora feeder.
Josh Bokey with the Frederick High Feeder.
Anna Feldman, I'm the administrator representative. I'm the principal at Yellow Springs Elementary.
The CISO of the Frederick County Health Department.
Lisa Hannon, I represent the school feeder.
Daphne Church, I represent.
Robin Seidel, I'm the healthcare professional, and Yuande is suffering in Hawaii.
And I'm Jen Metcalf. I represent intimate partner violence organizations. I work at Hartley House, and then I also have kids in the TJ High School feeder area.
Miss Valentine, I'm the health and PE teacher specialist.
Brian Griffith, teacher, curriculum specialist for health and PE. Thank you.
Okay, so look over the last meeting minutes from September. Take a look at it and, see if there's any corrections. Anybody have any additions or corrections? Someone want to approve the meeting minutes?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Second?
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Who's the second? Sorry.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. So then I guess we're going to move right on to new business.
We do have to vote.
Oh, we don't have to vote,
to
that's
approve.
right.
Sorry.
All in favor of approving the minutes, say, raise your hand. So we can count. Against?
Abstain.
Abstains? This one? Yeah. So we're going to move on for Rissa Watkins to give us a YRBS presentation.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That's why we skipped me an introduction, so, because I was getting that all for myself. So I am Rissa Watkins with the Frederick County Health Department. Thank you, Ashley. I am the director of our Office of Planning, Assessment, and Communication and the lead epidemiologist for the County Health Department. So I get to talk to you all about data. Some of you, I don't know how many of you are new, but I've given a presentation about this survey before. So this is an update for this committee and perhaps for some of you because we have some more recent data. So the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, YRBS, gotta have the acronyms, is a federal survey that is first written by CDC, and then the states adopt it and have the option of adding on additional modules. So while we are administering this in Frederick County, it is not something that we create or have a whole lot of sway over. Those decisions are made at a higher level. But it is something that we historically always participate in. All the counties in Maryland do. And it gives us some really good insight into our middle and high school students. So this is a survey that is typically administered every other school year. And this one was administered statewide September 2022 through January 2023. In Frederick County, it was administered to 11 of the middle schools and 10 high schools. So that's that's all the high schools, and I think that's all the middle schools, right? There's 13. Thank you. A couple more. So it's 100% of the general high schools and most of the middle schools. Overall, we had 4,401 Frederick County students completing the survey. We got the breakdown of about 1,400 middle school students and almost 3,000 high school students. And I think Brian had an additional comment that he wanted to add on this.
Yeah, just that in FCPS, we pretty much give it from November and December of that year. We try to wrap up all the surveys before winter break so that we don't have any going over. A few years ago, we did have one school, but this year we were lucky to get them all in that time frame.
And I think logistically, it's typically offered in one period, so that kids are not taking it multiple times. It's one class time, and you're getting a section of the kids. Is that correct?
Correct. We identify second period or second block in all of our buildings. So therefore, we can pool the classes, make it easier. We try to take some of that burden off of the schools. We can pull all that data centrally. So we pull all of the second block classes for the identified schools. We send it to the contractor. The contractor identifies the specific classes, all randomly selected. And then that report goes out for those of the students who are involved in the survey.
So it's important to remember that this is not a comprehensive survey of every single student. This is a randomized selection. So obviously you have way more than 4,400 students, so that should have been clear. But as most surveys go, it is a randomized selection so that we can have generalizable information and not be overly burdensome to all of the schools. It is a big lift and an ask for all the time that it takes and taking away time from classrooms also. So we are really grateful to get a good response in Frederick County that is statistically representative of the community. And while we know that in general, when kids are writing answers in, this is all self-reported, you're gonna get some that maybe aren't completely honest, and you're gonna get some that are extremely honest. I mean, that's kind of the way kids go, right? So what's really interesting is to take that big picture view. Generally, we try to have a trend. So, if you assume that a certain number of students aren't going to be fully honest, that generally kind of carries. You can get that big picture view. I will say the selection of questions that I have to review with you tonight, I don't have a lot of trend data because there's been a lot of changes. And so you can't compare when something was different in the past. There was another random thought there. Let's see how it goes. So just for the demographic breakdown for Frederick County, so it was almost 3,000 students selected. and who took the survey, about 55% were identified themselves as white, 19% as Hispanic, 14% as Black, and 6% as Asian. Those percentages are slightly, the demographics are slightly higher in the student population than in the overall county population, and that is what we're generally seeing. We're seeing a more diverse population when we look younger. So that is tracking and is one of the ways that I say, like, yep, that's showing me that that is representative of this age group of our population. Got almost about half and half, male, female, 6% identified as having a disability, 3% transgender, 24% identified as being lesbian, gay, bisexual, questioning, or other. And if you have questions, you can just ask them as we go along. I'm good with that. For the middle school students, we've got 1,400, and demographics are slightly different than the high school students, so a little bit of a smaller white population, 52% white, a little bit higher with the Hispanic population, 20%, 14% Black, a little bit higher on the Asian, 7% Asian, and then 7% multiracial, and then a little bit lower on the female responses, but consistent with the disability. And then sexuality questions are not asked in the middle school survey. So since I was asked specifically to pull information about, family life, relationships, sexual health, and identity, I wanted to start with the ACEs questions. And ACEs, as I'm sure many of you are familiar, stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. These can include abuse, neglect, growing up in a family with mental health or substance use problems. And we know from a lot of research that the toxic stress from children experiencing these adverse childhood experiences can change brain development and affect how the body responds to stress. ACEs experienced in childhood are linked to chronic health problems, mental illness, and substance misuse in adulthood. So we're really focused on what the ACEs are in our community. What is new in this year, we typically had about 5 ACEs that we were looking at. 3 more were added in, and that has allowed the state to break the ACEs up into 2 groups. So one is focused on child maltreatment, the circle on the left. And so we've got physical neglect, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and emotional abuse. Those are all things that the child is experiencing themselves. And then the other 4 are household challenges. Is anyone in the household experiencing substance misuse, mental illness, caregiver incarceration, or witnessing intimate partner violence? So we've got 8 different categories of ACEs to go through. You will note on the slide that 3 of them are new, as I said, and then several of them are only asked to the high school students. All right, so up first, one of the new ones is physical neglect, and included on the slide is the question that students were asked. How often has there been an adult in your household who tried hard to make sure your basic needs were met, such as looking after your safety, making sure you had clean clothes and enough to eat? So this is little. And actually yes.
Can I just ask, is there a scale that they use? How is that? Is it like sometimes, always, never, or?
So that is a good question. How did they? I think it was on a general Likert scale of, is it like often, always, sometimes, never, that type of thing. Yeah. That is pretty consistent with how they ask. And I did not notice until now that it looks like the percentages got a little wonky on this slide, but consistently, so we're looking at percent answers. And this question was only asked in high school students. So you are seeing the bars of all of the counties in the state of Maryland. The blue bar is always going to be the state itself, and I have made Frederick County green. So for physical neglect, for this topic, Maryland had an average of 10.7% of students were reporting that they They reported that an adult had never or rarely tried to make sure that their basic needs were met. So 10.7% at the state, and Frederick County was at 7.5%. We're doing better than the state average and the vast majority of the counties. And the Frederick County number, yes.
Is there a reason why they waited to high school to ask that question?
I do not have a good answer to that. I don't know where that decision was made. I don't know if that module was not available at the lower level, but I can find out. I can ask at the state person if that is something of interest. Yeah. So in the interest of time, I am giving you a really high overview of this stuff. So we're going to have like the question and then this graph where you can see where we relate to the other counties. So big picture. Emotional abuse. So you can see below the title is what the question was now, and then in the yellow box above is how the wording was in the previous survey. So there was a change which made us not able to compare things, and the change was that they removed the word sworn at you. So they are counting emotional abuse as how often has a parent or other adult in your home insulted you or put you down. I do not have good reason why they've made this change. That change was made far, far above my pay grade. So we can see for this one that, again, we've got Maryland in blue, and that's down at 59.3% for the state average. And Frederick County is in green at 63.6%. So we were the second. Yeah.
Is this still rare or never? Sorry. I'm trying to think of the scale.
I know, and they do change for each one. So this is the percent of students who reported that a parent or another adult had ever.
Okay.
And
That's what it says. I just wanted to.
yeah, always good to check. And there was a lot of discussion in the last few years because when you're looking at ACEs, is there a threshold of, is it important that it happened 3 times, 5 times? Is it happening every week? And what they're seeing now is that when it comes to these categories of adverse childhood experiences, it really is ever. Because it can impact you so much and can cause the stress, and that can change the developing brain. And so they are really concerned with ever experiencing, which was a shift from how things were analyzed and processed in the previous years. Okay. Physical abuse is another new question that was only asked in high schools. And I think this was what I was thinking of earlier. There are a lot of questions. The high school survey is over 120. The middle school survey is over 80. So that's where they try real hard to, that's a lot. And these are pretty heavy questions. So that may factor into, how many they're adding into which one. But I can find out more about that. So for physical abuse, we're looking at the percentage of students reported that a parent or other adult in their home had ever hit, beat, kicked, or physically hurt them in any way. Maryland is at 33.9%, and Frederick County is a little bit lower than that at 32.5%. So we're almost middle of the road there for Frederick County. A third of students are saying that this has ever happened to them. That was a little surprising to me.
That includes spanking.
So this goes to
It's a child's.
it is not clarified any more than this question, hurt you in any way. So children will have different experiences and different ideas of what is normal. So one kid may have included spanking and one kid might not have. It is somewhat subjective. Sexual abuse is another new question, and it is also asked for high school students only. And this is, has an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever made you do sexual things that you did not want to do? And they did add that, which they don't always do. I think it's interesting. They added the counting things such as kissing, touching, being made to have sexual intercourse. So they were giving a little bit more guidance on that one. So for students reporting that this had ever happened, we have Maryland at 7.3%, and Frederick County is lower than the state and one of the lowest in the county at 6.6%. Oh, and was I mentioning, did I miss a couple of my highlights? I did. So in sexual abuse, it is reported more frequently among female students, Asian students, Hispanic students, multiracial students, or students who identified as LGBTQ. And I did miss those notes on the couple. So just to physical abuse, physical neglect is reported more frequently among male students, Black, Hispanic, and multiracial students. Emotional abuse was reported higher by the LGBTQ students. And then physical abuse is reported more frequently among the Asian, Black, or multiracial students or LGBTQ students. I caught you up now. Sorry about that. Our next question is about household substance use. So we finished the 4 about the students' experience and moved into the household category. This was also a change, slightly changed wording. So have you ever lived with a parent or guardian who is having a problem with alcohol or drug use? The clarification was to specify parent or guardian. And in Maryland, 19.9% of students reported ever living with a parent or guardian who's having problems with alcohol or drugs. And in Frederick County, that was higher at 22.4%. And the LGBTQ students reported household substance misuse at higher rates. For household mental illness, and this question was changed slightly to clarify parent or guardian. And for students reporting that they have ever lived with a parent or guardian who had severe depression, anxiety, or another mental illness, or was suicidal. Maryland had 23.3% of students report this, and Frederick County was higher than the state at 26.4%. Students who identified as LGBTQ or multiracial reported household mental illness at higher rates. Our caregiver incarceration question is one of the few that didn't have a change. And for students reporting that they have ever been separated from a parent or caregiver because they were in jail, prison, or a detention center, 11% of Maryland students reported this, and Frederick County was lower than the state average at 9.3%. Caregiver incarceration was reported in Frederick County more frequently among Black and multiracial students or among LGBTQ+ students.
The detention center, does that include like an immigration detention center, or is it just like a criminal?
Criminal detention center. For witnessing intimate partner violence, we have students reporting that their parents or other adults in their home ever slapped, hit, kicked, punched, or beat each other up. In Maryland, it was 18%, and in Frederick County, it was lower at 16%. Witnessing intimate partner violence is reported more frequently among female students, Black, Hispanic, or multiracial students, and LGBTQ+ students. So that is the 8th topic of the ACEs. And I wanted to give a little perspective of how having experienced this adverse childhood experience influences other risk behaviors that the survey asks about. So on this graph, the blue bars are students, and this is Frederick County data, so students who had 0 ACEs. And the black bars are students who had at least 1 ACE. So they answered yes to one of those 8 questions. You can see a whole bunch of different risk factors on the left side here. I'm going to point your attention to the widest bar, which is towards the bottom, the persistently sad or hopeless. So 32.4% of students who did not have any ACEs, so no adverse childhood experiences, a third of those students said that they felt persistently sad or hopeless. But of the students who had at least 1 ACE, and in this situation, the ACE was experiencing intimate partner violence specifically, 60%, so double the number of students were reporting feeling persistently sad. And that is what we see across the board for every ACE that we look at. When we look at how those students answered these risk behavior questions, they are generally double, sometimes more than double, the experience of the students who are not having those experiences. Questions? So that brings us to switching to, yay, there are positive childhood experiences. It's not all bad things. And there are a variety of questions about positive childhood experiences because we know that even though some students have 1 or multiple ACE, the fact that they may also have a positive childhood experience really goes a long way to mitigate those issues and reduce the likelihood of some of those risk behaviors. So there's a bunch of questions listed out here, and what you can see by the NAs is that they're asking different questions in middle school for middle school and high school students. But the second question they're asking everybody, do you seek help from 1 or more non-parent adults? So I like to look at that question because that's for all the students, middle and high. And we see that 81.9% of the middle school students say, yeah, I have someone who's not a parent who I can talk to. And slightly lower, but 78.8% of the high school students say, yeah, I have someone to talk to. That is wonderful. And it is great to see some of these other positive childhood experiences that have big impacts. And so when we look at how do we deal with some of the ACEs, we reduce the ACE experiences that people have, ideally, and we also try to increase the number of positive childhood experiences. And we can see that relationship in this graph. So the black lines are students who had 0 positive childhood experiences. Yellow is that they had at least 1 positive childhood experience, and red, they had 2. And you can see across these mental health outcomes, we've got considered suicide, made a suicide plan, they attempted suicide, or there's just overall poor mental health. And what we see is the more positive childhood experiences they have, the less likely they are to be reporting these mental health outcomes. So we're seeing this, and this was exciting to me because we hear about these results in national surveys, but we are literally seeing this in our community. So that's very, very encouraging. We've got a couple other things to throw at you. So outside of the ACEs questions, because remember those are just 8, and I'm not giving you the other, 111 of them. But since we just had the slide that mentioned suicide, there are, oh, nope, that's the next slide. We're talking about mental health first. So we've got middle school data on the left, and that is showing us that almost 1 in 4, so 22.2% of our middle school students reported that their mental health was not good most of the time during the month before the survey. And then almost a third, 31.2% of the middle school students reported that they felt sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks and that they weren't able to do their normal activities. In the high school data on the right, we've got 30% of the high school students reporting that their mental health was not good most of the time. And more than a third, 37.6% of the high school students reported feeling sad or hopeless almost every day. So we are seeing these outcomes higher in high school than middle school. And I've got the red text on the right side to show that comparison to the previous survey, which was done in 2021. And we see, so that is pulling out the sad and hopeless questions, so the dark blue. So the middle school students in the previous survey were 37.6, so that's down to 31.2. That has gone down, and the high school students are also down, just not quite as much. So this is what we're seeing consistently with population surveys. 2021 was still very, very much during the COVID pandemic, and it was stressful for everyone. So by and large, we are seeing improvements in mental health, and it is good to see that reflected here as well. Yes.
Do you have any questions on there about using phones or internet or social media? Because that has a correlation to mental health.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And that might affect, because like 2021, think about, we were still doing online a lot more. So I could see it both ways with the pandemic, but also.
I think there are questions in the federal survey about
Yeah,
internet use and how often you use it.
there is internet. There's how often are you on your computer or a device? I know they've got questions about amount of hours spent in front of screen. I know they do screen time.
It'd be interesting if they had questions. Does this social media affect
Mhm.
your mental state? There's a lot there because that doesn't give you much data on why.
Yes.
So that's what I'd be interested in.
That is definitely a thing to be interested in. The why question that's hard for adults to figure out. So it's
Dig a little deeper.
dig a little deeper.
You have 120 questions.
I hear you.
Or maybe they're so tired.
If they have a screen time,
Yeah, that is a
does
really
it
good.
correlate to who's reporting that they're feeling
Yes.
sad?
And that's a great question. I can check with the state YRBS data person to see if they can look at any correlations. Because that's what they do with the ACEs and the positive childhood experiences to see, and the risk factors to see, like, if you answer this, how does it look for that? So that is something I don't know if they have looked at already, but I can definitely ask. For our suicide questions, again, middle school is on the left, high school data is on the right. So for suicide, we always have 3 questions. Have you seriously thought about attempting? Have you made a plan? Because we know that is an important point. And then have you actually attempted suicide? I will just note at least in the middle school survey, they don't use the word suicide. They use this, I think they use the term about, I think they might actually say killing yourself. So it's a very plain language.
I mean, that makes sense.
So more than 1 in 5 middle school students reported that they were seriously thinking about suicide. What you can clearly see here is that the middle school numbers for those first 2 columns, the blue and the orange, middle school's higher. More middle school students reported thinking about attempting, and more middle school students thought about or reported making a plan than high school students. The percent of students who reported that they had made an attempt was almost the same, 8% for middle school and 9% for high school. What is interesting to note is the comparisons to the previous year, which is in red below them. we saw a lot of decreases for the most part in the thinking about suicide, in the planning suicide. So that is promising. And the largest decrease was actually in the high school students reporting that they had attempted suicide. In the previous survey, that was reported at 17%, and that's down to 9%. So that was a very, very big change and in an encouraging direction. I will say that the previous year, so 2 surveys back, it was concerning to see the middle school student numbers be this high. So it definitely had, I would posit that there is an association with the stress of COVID, that we haven't seen that fully come down, and there have been other stressors since, but we are higher than we had been, well, lower from the previous one, but we're not back to lower numbers from before, if that makes sense. Thinking of family, and one of the things that can be one of the major stressors is food insecurity. And 2 of the questions are related to that, looking about if the family often or sometimes worried about the food money running out, and then did it actually run out? So we've got the yellow about, are we worried? And green is it actually ran out. 17% of middle school students and 14% of high school students reported being worried. And the percent of students who reported food running out was lower for both, but higher for middle school students at 12% versus 10% for high school students. What was notable in this is that these numbers are all higher than the previous survey. There were a lot of pandemic relief projects and funding and additional support during the previous survey that have ended. And as we all know, cost of food just continues to go up, but these numbers are from the fall of 2022. So if you're thinking about what your students are experiencing now, it's probably more than what they had 2 years ago. Looking at the questions about sexuality, so on the left, we've got both middle and high school students are asked if they have ever had sexual intercourse. Overall, the average of middle school students is 3.7. That does increase as you move through the middle school grades. And it also increases through the high school grades with an overall of almost 1 in 4, so 23.6% of high school students reported ever having had sex. On the right side is a question that was only asked for the high school students, and it's if you were currently sexually active within 3 months before the survey, and about 17.5% of high school students were reporting that, and that's been pretty consistent. Most of these have been relatively consistent from year to year. And on the topic of sexuality, some of you may remember way back when, gosh, Brian, when was it? Once upon a time, the state provided a lovely map that showed sexually transmitted infections of student age population by the school districts. It took, I don't know, a year and a half. Oh, good Lord. Longer than either of us expected to present this to you this evening. So we are looking specifically at chlamydia and gonorrhea in Frederick County in our 15 to 19-year-old population. And this is just for 1 year. This is 2022. So same year as the YRBS survey data. This figure was used creating the zip codes assigned to the schools. It may not be accurate. The state made me promise to say, they're assigning things, school boundaries are shifting. And so the STI cases are reported by zip code. They did their utmost to figure out where they landed. So we've got some nice little heat coloring here, and the legend is teeny in the bottom right corner. These are case counts. These are actual cases, not rates. So the lightest yellow is 1 to 5 cases, and it's Columbia-Goderich combined. 1 to 5, so Catoctin catchment area, 1 to 5 cases. The darkest red is 46 to 70. And so that dark red is what you're seeing over in Linganore area. So overall for the county, for 15 to 19-year-olds in 2022, we had 179 cases of chlamydia and 20 cases of gonorrhea.
These are only kids documented and tested them. Right.
Yes, these are the cases that have been reported to the state. I can't talk about the ones I don't know about. But yes, so as always, STI data is likely far underreported. But this is what I have. So the highest school districts are Linganore, TJ, Frederick, and Tuscarora. Like 30 seconds to go through a slide that literally took us a year and a half. Oh my goodness, you have no idea. I feel like you should just sit with that. Okay, it's fine. That was just a big deal for me. I did battle for y'all. I just want to say that. So final thoughts on all of that data. When we're looking at things that were significantly higher in Frederick County compared to the state as a whole, emotional abuse, household substance misuse, household mental illness, those were the ones that really stood out. We know that there are significant inequities by sex, race, sexual orientation, transgender identity, here literally just in Frederick County. As I mentioned, we're showing that there has been some improvements in the mental health outcomes as we move a little further past the pandemic, and there's always more. So the next survey is now. And this is pretty typical. It takes so long to get it implemented and then all the data rolled out and analyzed that it's usually about 2 years, sorry. So that is what I have. Any questions?
Just an observation, and I don't think it's really the domain of this group or probably your role, but if I can send it back to the health department.
Sure.
So I was really taken aback by the 2 positive childhood experience, the distinction for the risk factors that you showed, the slide with the red and the German flag.
Yes.
That's how I was thinking of it. So, and when I look at this, I mean, it's astonishing. And here's what I think. I think that this information is so important for our youth organizations. And I don't know how we're communicating this to volunteers. I speak as a Girl Scout troop leader, and there are many times I want to quit because it's exhausting and I have a full-time job, but I don't. And when I saw this, I was like, I'm seeing these kids through high school. Like, forget it. I'm in it to win it. Like, this tells me something. And I feel like your coaches, your church groups, your scouts, there's a million people who are doing this job thanklessly every day in our community. And I think a lot of them, if they understood this, that would seal it for them in a really powerful way. So I don't know how we get that out there. I know like Girl Scouts is like highly organized. So if you could get this to our association, they would feed it down to the service units who would feed it down to the troop leaders. And I suspect a lot of groups are like that. Sports clubs, church groups. I mean, I feel like it's,
Is there anything that so they're each highly organized, but there's nothing that organizes them all, right? There's no way to, how do you hit them all?
There is the new 12 to 24 coalition that is trying to bring together all the youth serving organizations in one umbrella. They're going to be opening the youth center by the old by McCurdy Field. So I think this information, I'll send you an email because I'm on that coalition, but just because I feel like it's just kind of those things that some of us know it and we assume everyone knows it. I think the other piece that goes along with that is, and I was very hopeful, the number of kids who have more than one trusted adult that's not a parent. Because I know in doing prevention work, especially if you're talking about preventing child child trafficking, having one trusted adult in a kid's life is life-changing and is key to prevention. So I think just anytime we can empower those adults who are serving youth to know it's not, like you were saying, it can be exhausting, but man, if you can like make those connections, be a trusted person, help create those positive experiences, it can change a kid's life, but it can also prevent a lot of violence.
I was going to suggest, from my work at social services, I was part of a faith-based initiative that brought together leaders from, all leaders of all different congregations, churches, et cetera, temples in the community were invited to participate. And social workers kind of led we would lead the group. There was a appointed social worker, but that's a great place to disseminate information. I know Hartley House came and did a presentation on ACEs to them at one point, and it was really eye-opening. So maybe something like this too, where you can reach, in a 2-hour meeting, a large group of people then who have outreach amongst other, other agencies that are involved. But it's a good way to reach if you're looking for that faith-based connection.
I know, not senior services anymore, Aging and Independence. All the name changes, that they have a group that works with the faith-based community, because there have been several faith-based collaborations. So which one is?
If you contact Jennifer Silliman at Department of Social Services, she's the one that coordinates it.
Is it the Faith and Family Partnership?
Yeah, it used to be faith-based. I know it changed over the year,
Changing, but
I don't know the new, but it was a really good, it was a really good way to reach out to a large part of the community to see what our community is in need of and how to address it and help and get involved. So
It's very interesting to know that that one exists, because I often hear that's similar to what Aging and Independence has, and how often are we tapping the same group of people? And maybe we should just, coordinate together. But that's great. Thank you so much for that one. Yeah, I think that it would be helpful to have, maybe even some little infographic geared to the adults, like, you're tired, your time is literally saving lives. This makes a huge difference.
It'd be a great social campaign. I feel like there's a marketing, because it's so immediately,
Yes.
there's no, you don't have to do your full presentation to see that.
To see for that one, yes. Oh, yeah.
I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, no one wants to sit through the whole thing. Sorry, guys.
I'm into it.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments?
What happens to all this information as far as, does it ever get out to the public? Does
Oh, yeah, this is all public data.
But not where people will find it or look for, do they know to look for it?
That's the issue.
Yeah.
don't know.
No, I've done public communication for several years, and no, people don't know where to look for it. So,
What about a front page?
front page, we do
Color.
have
And
in
a flag.
German flag. I love that. So we do have every couple years, we do the Frederick Community Health Needs Assessment, where I pull this data along with 40 other health indicators and put it all together in one thing, and we use that as a community between the health department, the hospital, and the Coalition for a Healthier Frederick, and we present information to the community, use that to help set priorities. So this does get rolled up into a report that I know ends up getting used by a lot of our nonprofits, our community groups, our colleges and university students who are looking for projects and data. So I know that part of it is I try to gather as much as I can so that it is easily accessible, because it's all over the place. So that is one way, and that will be finalized in May. But, and there is usually press releases associated with the progress that we make for that health assessment. It's not specifically just this, it's everything but the kitchen sink. There's.
You ever done a find out first to let parents know that the updated data is available?
Send out stuff.
That's what I thought.
Do you mind if I take that?
Go for it.
So on the minutes, and we can send these out as well. We've included 4 links. So FCPS does have our own website. We kind of created that own to create and share guidance with our community members. I will include the Frederick County Health Department's site. I will include the Maryland Youth YRBS site and the CDC site as well. So as Rissa said, the Maryland survey is different from CDC, but that's one of the reasons why it takes so long. We do it in the fall, but CDC around all the country does it in the spring. And so that's why it takes a year and a half to get the data. But you will have links to all of those different resources. They include the questions, all of the questionnaires. We ask for us to kind of keep it towards specific to supporting this committee. But there are, as she shared, there's a lot of other questions. All that information is posted there as well. All right.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. That was impressive and depressive.
That is my life. Thanks for letting me come and depress everybody. At least your meeting's not right before Christmas, because I've had to give presentations like this. I'm like, happy holidays. My contact information is at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to. And I'd love to hear from those of you who had suggestions of how else we can do stuff. So I'm gonna bail and leave y'all to have more things.
Thank you.
Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Ready? Okay. Next item is a material review. For those of you who are new to the committee, this is the first time you're doing this. For those of you who have experience, basically you all should have picked up a review form. We are going to be reviewing a resource called from One Love called Love Labyrinth. It is only about 3 minutes, 41 seconds long. If you did any searching online through YouTube, you probably found a copy of this video. One Love, they are not vetted by One Love. Basically, One Love knows that people have gotten the videos and posted on in a variety of places, including YouTube and everything else. They can't say that those are the actual videos that they use. So our teachers are using an educator portal that One Love has set up in order to share the video and resources and things like that. So we will be looking at that. You have 2 objectives up at the top, Health 1 and Health 2. The reason why we put both objectives up there is because we are considering this video for 9th grade or our 11th and 12th grade class. And the reason why is because we are going to do an audit this spring and look at some of the different videos and make sure that they're appropriately aligned and where they fit and everything else, just to make sure that we have resources that are appropriate to that grade level and resource and things like that. So you will be reviewing this resource and thinking about any of our students pretty much in high school that would be using and accessing this video. Any questions or anything else before we move on?
Do like a content one?
That's what I was about to do. So yes, just as we are going to be talking about unhealthy relationships, you are going to be seeing signs of abuse. If anybody does have any issues, please understand that we understand. And if you need to step out, please do so. Please take care of yourself first. That is one of the same information that our teachers will be giving students as we go through this information. The other things is that our teachers are instructed to contact and inform their counselors and any other key people in the building that need to know we are talking about these sensitive topics. Yep.
Do they say it right before they show it, or is it like
No.
something they preface before?
So I've been teaching it for the last 12 years, and this is probably day 3, 4 of the topic. One, the training is awesome for teachers, and we have guidelines for teachers that aren't necessarily comfortable. There's guidelines and I don't want to say a script, but how you can preface that it's a sensitive topic. But a lot of the teachers also are teaching this later in the term, so relationships are established. I warn my kids about this a week in advance. Guidance counselors a week in advance. They know it's coming. We do have some students that choose not to come. And then students that voice their, I might step out, kind of what Brian just said. So we're very open and transparent about what they're about to view.
You do have a form that we're going to be asking you to fill out, and we will be collecting this. We will not call out individual numbers, but we will say if this was approved or not in order to move forward and in order to put that in our minutes as well. So as you're going through, but we will give you a minute or two after the video is over in order to complete the form. One of the things, we are not sharing any lesson plans, obviously, because I'm not asking teachers to write a lesson plan at this time if we don't even know if this is going to be approved. But One Love does have multiple resources that we can use in order to support lesson plan implementation. They actually have 3 different resources, so there's a variety of ways that we could borrow from them in order to implement this video as well.
I have a question about the forms. It says on number 5, does this resource have the potential to add value to elementary school students?
Oh,
No.
That's a mistake. I just
Sorry.
want-
which?
Number
Oh,
5.
yeah, sorry. I apologize.
It's not up to you.
So not yet.
Should be high school. I apologize.
Is it high school?
Yes, high school.
High
only.
school.
Is there a question, isn't there normally a question that says something like, do you recommend this be?
So there-
Thank you.
Additional
Oh, yeah, we're going to add that to the bottom. We'll get that done afterwards. Any discussion or comments on the video?
When it started, it was kind of like hit me and not, I don't want to say overwhelmed me, but as I watched it, I realized that that's actually how these relationships play out. So I think it was very, clever's not the right word, but there's something about the way that it was filmed, the jumping around, it didn't matter when any of those incidents were happening. Because I was trying to follow a sequence, and that actually wasn't relevant. It was just the frequency. So that was a really, and I am a mother of 2 adolescent teenage daughters. So that is something that they would not be bored with. I think it would grab them. But one of the things that I especially want to make a comment about, this behavior as a mother of 2 teenage daughters, this type of behavior is much more common than any of us know or probably want to admit. Due to social media and what I consider is just, and it's almost unavoidable at this point in the world, the overusage of cell phones and the immediacy of contacting people through texts, snaps, whatever it is, there's no waiting, there's no delay, there's no nothing. So domestic violence, IPV, all of that stuff is masked by what we are all finding to be just the norm with phones and social media. So none of that was subtle to me as a clinician. That was pretty openly, aggressive behavior, and I think going to get a lot worse. But to our children who we're raising in this very technological world, I think it is going to be hard for them to differentiate at an early, safe age. Oh, this isn't supposed to feel good at this age. So I think something like this, and I mean, people might disagree. I would want my daughters to see this before high school.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
So by high school, sometimes the patterns and the dynamics and relationships get kind of in. They are children. The more they are exposed to it, the more they accept it, the more they're involved in it. And so I as a parent, to me, the younger the better. But I think that social media phones mask what was going on there, and we're all guilty of the immediate, the immediate with a phone, and that was very. I didn't think it was, it's not subtle to us, but I think to our kids it's going to be subtle. So I don't want to say I liked the video. It's scary, but I think it did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, I found it a little confusing because I was trying to follow a story. But when I kind of realized that it was just the frequency and illustrating the frequency, I also realized that my 2 teenage daughters would have no problem following that type of choppy, that's their world with the flipping of scrolling. But, and I agree, I think middle school is really, I would like to see this in middle school too. I think when I'm in elementary school and I have kids who have smartphones already. But I would venture to say 90% of middle schoolers have cell phones at this point. And so that's where you're starting to say what is acceptable behavior and what is not acceptable behavior. And so they've already kind of created those ideas for themselves and what is okay. And so then you're trying to unlearn your standards when you get to high school. And so I feel like what the message of this was is that, no, I don't have to be immediately available to you, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong. I think that message is a really good one for our middle schoolers to hear. Because I have a 13-year-old at 8th grade, and we have a no phones between 4 and 7 because she was getting to the point where she was like, but if I don't respond, they're going to be mad at me. And I'm like, then that's not a friend. Like, I don't care. So, we just instituted that in our household, and I will share that my junior in high school, she's like, I love the 4 to 7 rule. She's like, because I'm free. Like, I don't have to respond. So I think setting those boundaries for yourself really should happen much sooner than high school.
So I think that I'm with you on the jumpiness, and I finally got it, and it's like, oh, okay, I get it. It's intentional. They're artists. They're fine. But I think that the menace that runs through it and the pervasiveness is really good. And I agree. I'm a 5th grader, so I'm not quite there yet. But I agree. Probably the younger ages. I don't know if the fact that they live together would make it seem like that's a different relationship. That's not like my boyfriend, because I don't live with him. So I don't know about that piece of it. But I think the earlier the better. And overall, I thought it's very impactful. I'm worried that we're all talking about the phone when the relationship is more than the phone, right? That's like a metaphor for controlling behavior. I assume that the curriculum would speak more broadly and
It's a 15-page document.
So that was my only concern as I heard the conversation evolving, if we're really just, kids are so literal, especially the younger ones, they might not make that intellectual leap.
We build up with, there's 10 signs, but the One Love has the 10 signs of unhealthy, healthy. So it all is encompassing with the characteristics.
Okay.
And we do have objectives covered in middle school. So we do cover, start with healthy relationships in elementary, but we do cover it in middle school. There are objectives covered there. This resource would be a resource added to high school.
Just to kind of bounce off what you just said, I didn't take it as a frequency issue between them. I took it as he was hammering about this one situation over a long period of time, which I think is less about the phone and more about the toxicity that he just wouldn't let it go. He really needed to know whatever. I don't know if anybody else saw it like that, but that's kind of how I took it, that she didn't answer this time, and he just, every time we see them again, he's still asking.
It's also in the name, the labyrinth is meant to depict us. It's a cycle of violence, right? Because you see the honeymoon phase, and then the volatility is ramping up. I did do some math. I'd done this for something else, but I thought it was pertinent to this conversation. Statistically, nationally, 1 in 5 teenagers are going to experience intimate partner violence. And so what that translates to, if you break down just from 7th to 12th grade in Frederick County Public Schools, that's about 4,993 of our students are going to experience some form of intimate partner violence. So I love that we are using this. I love that we're using the One Love materials. Is important. And you're right, it starts earlier than.
And I like that too. And I love what Jen said, and I like what everybody said. I really appreciate it. I do think it needs to come earlier so that they have that in their head before they fall in love, and they get emotionally attached, and then everything is okay, and they think it's healthy. And I like that it showed that the subtle change, how it was a subtle thing gradually, and that, you get sucked in, and the gaslighting and the, it's not me, it's you, and, you know, and just can't let it go, and has to have the total control thing. That I'm sure some of that gets brought out in the conversations. That's what I was with the curriculum, that, why it is a problem, and you are not going crazy. That it isn't you, it's them. This could be another girl, this could be a girlfriend, but,
Correct. I mean, we use, the terminology we use is partner and significant
just
other.
the whole bullying, it's, all you know, the whole bullying thing that, you know, you wanna be with me and, you know, the whole
But
clique and.
she was saying about the friend, like when we're talking about this in middle school, like it's not always a romantic relationship. We're talking about healthy and unhealthy characteristics of all relationships. So as she was saying, she felt trapped, like that's sometimes, so yes.
Yes.
I guess my big answer is yes.
And I,
Yes.
Casey, sorry.
Had,
we can go down there first.
Go ahead, and then we'll get, again, if you want to, sorry, throwing you on the spot after Kelly goes. We have a middle school teacher here as well that can talk a little bit too, so.
Well, I just wanted to say that, yeah, I mean, yeah, it'd be great to show it in middle school, but I think it would actually be more helpful in high school because that's when you really find yourself in that position as somebody who could be in that relationship. And I think this depicts really well how hard it is to get out of something like that because you saw how fast she would go back. And
Going back.
and that could be you watching exactly what's happening to you in high school, I think more so than in middle
yeah.
school. And then having that like discussion about it, you know, in your class and kind of being potentially made aware of, you know, having your eyes open. I think that would be super helpful to some people in high school specifically.
And like she said, sometimes it's not a relationship thing. Sometimes it's just your friends that.
But in high school, I think I think it would be
I'm
more
talking
into
about
with
at
high
the middle school.
with the relationship.
At the
Yeah,
middle school
in
level,
middle
it's
school.
more like friends and
Yeah.
not necessarily relationship,
Yeah.
but when it gets to, so we
Yeah.
can do it with middle school kids, but just
Oh,
change.
yeah.
We're not,
Yeah.
this is only for high school.
No, I know for this is high school, but if we're gonna show it to middle school kids so that they're aware as well, because that's where sometimes it starts, like she said, so we'll have to.
We have other resources that definitely like start this conversation in middle school. Like this conversation definitely, like, there's objectives in the middle school that starts the conversation for this, for sure.
Casey, do you want to, sorry.
Sure. Yeah, so in seventh grade, we do a lot of the healthy and unhealthy characteristics. And there's a few little One Love videos that are like animated and they end with the "that's not love." You know, and sometimes it's just anger. Like, you will come over. No, you will come over. No, I have to study. And so just giving those examples, but they're cute little animated, age appropriate for seventh grade. And we start that conversation. I just finished eighth grade health and I had some really sad but like powerful conversations with my eighth grade students when we got to the relationships and what they thought was healthy. And there's a lot of good stuff in our eighth grade curriculum when we are talking about these things, but at a level where I think they kind of relate to it more. Like I've been in middle school for 11 years. There was a part where the girl was in a bathing suit or a bra and we would have lost them. I'm just gonna be realistic. Like, yeah, they're in a house. They're in, you know, he's showing up in the car, and it's just more of a mature content, which I think is appropriate for high school. But I will say we are covering this stuff at an early age, and we had, you know, open conversations in class about you don't have to give somebody access to your cell phone. They don't need access to your social media. They don't need to control and know where you're at every minute of every day. And those are like things like, unfortunately, are really common, and the students aren't hearing all the time that it's not a healthy relationship if somebody is that controlling, but it is part of our middle school curriculum. So it is being introduced early.
Yeah, Catherine, then we got to, unfortunately, we're just being aware of time, so.
Yeah, this is a totally naive question, but I see a lot of media and things about protecting yourself and boundaries and relationships from the perspective of someone who might be victimized or what's the other side? How do you prevent someone from victimizing you? How do you, like, what is there in these conversations, is there discussion about that deep sea? Okay.
Yeah, we talk about both those characters. Like, not this one, because we don't use this yet, but the other videos, I mean, a lot of them are depicted that way. And it's, yeah, we definitely talk about both sides.
building those resiliency skills before. So we know as just those positive connections, everything else, we know that that's actually what is going to change behavior and things like that. So yes. One of the things at the bottom, if you don't mind putting inside of there, yes, no, or abstain. Basically, you are voting to move this resource forward to the Board of Education for approval. Again, this committee does not approve it. It is only suggesting, recommending it for the board for review. I can share. Jess is going to tell them, would you like me to introduce the?
Sure.
Okay. So what, unfortunately, due to time, we're not going to be able to cover this. We're going to have to postpone this to the next meeting. But one of the things that a suggestion was brought to leadership. Leadership did put it on the agenda for you all to talk about. I just wanted to highlight the members of this committee. So at this point in time, you see that we have 10 feeder patterns listed there. We have high school students, the healthcare professional, 2 at-large members, professional educator, and I want to thank Casey. We didn't have Casey last time, but Casey volunteered and is going to be part of the committee moving forward. Ms. Feldman as well is our administrator. The health department, intimate partner violence, and the Board of Ed has a member as well. The suggestion, and in order, we're going to be talking about this at our January meeting, is should that first one parent from each of the 10 feeder areas include the charter schools? As our charter schools are increasing, as our population, as they are expanding into high schools as well, should we include 11 feeder patterns, including the 10 as well as a charter? So that is the discussion and vote that you all will be making at the next meeting.
For that discussion, could we have like the populations of those charter schools and location?
Yeah.
What would you like me to find out? Sorry, say it again. Population of the charter schools?
Yeah, the number
Okay.
of charter schools, where they're located, just some basic information so we have the.
I think we were going to talk about if they have, the charter schools have to follow the program.
Yes, the curriculum standards.
They teach this. Or- I don't know.
Okay. So give a description of the number of schools, the population that they serve, the number at the different ones, and kind of whether or not they are following our guidelines and everything else. Okay. I will be able to pull that data and I'll have it for the January meeting. What's the vote?
13, yes, one member.
Okay. So this item does pass. What we do is I will take this to the board. I will take your notes that you included on here. We'll transcribe them, put them on one file. We'll submit it to the board. We'll let you know whenever that does go out and is going to be on their agenda.
The video. Or the video.
Yes. Yeah. The video was approved by this group recommended by this group in order to move to the board for approval. High school health education.
Anything else for the recording? Okay.
5:55.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Yep. That's what you're asking for.
That's what I'm asking for. Motion. Second.
First.
Second.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.